Everyone. I am Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road2College and Paying for College 101 Facebook group, and I'm here today with Nancy Griesemer. Let me just do a little bit of housekeeping to get everything ready. Nancy, I'm going to spotlight you so people can see you, and I'll spotlight myself. Okay. Let me do a really quick introduction, then I want to stream this to Facebook. But I'm here today with Nancy Griesemer, who is a higher education expert, but you've really been a independent college counselor for over 15 years with your own company called College Explorations. And Nancy is the author or co-author with several other people who she'll explain of a new book. Well, I shouldn't even say that. Not a new book, right? A revised, or I don't know, what's the proper way of saying it?
Fifth edition.
Fifth edition book of Admissions Matters. And, you know, we're going to talk a little bit about a book, and Nancy's going to talk about how to research colleges, how to build your list, which a lot of that information is in the book. But Nancy, while I go and stream this to Facebook, maybe you can give a little background on yourself and a little bit more background on this book, because it's been around for a while, how it's been used, and the other authors.
Okay, thank you. And again, here's the book, Admission Matters. It's the 5th edition. Many of you who may be IECs or school counselors who are on the call now might have used it in the past. It is probably one of the very first handbooks or tools out there on college admissions. And it has been used as a textbook in counseling programs at universities, and is very well, I think, respected in the industry. The lead author is Sally Springer, and she came up with this idea back in 2011 because she thought there wasn't anything out there to help counselors or IECs to get information on how to do this thing called college advising. And so she spent several years putting together the original edition, and then she invited, for subsequent editions, invited a couple of other experts, Joyce Findings Morgan, maybe some of you know her as well, she's up in Vermont, and another well-respected author. And then we have a sort of a emeritus author in John Ryder, who worked on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th editions, but he left his place, and I ended up inheriting it, and it's been an enormous amount of work, I won't lie. A lot has happened in the industry over the past several years, as I'm sure all of you are aware, and for us to go through and bring it up to date was really almost starting from scratch in many ways. But that's the background.
And the other thing I want to mention, Nancy and I were talking before we got on, it's a very nice, easy to read book. And when I say easy, it doesn't mean that it's basic, but it's just good fundamentals. And it's like a great reference book to have if you want a guide and you're a parent that's doing this on their own. I think it's a great resource to have.
Yeah, Debbie, that's exactly what our goal was. And in past editions, the one accolade that has been consistent about the book is that it is not threatening. It's not written to scare you. Oh my God, if I don't start freshman year, or if my kid doesn't have an instrument, a club, a sport, they won't get into college. That's our whole goal, was to make it reassuring and to make it so that it's, you know, readable, easy to use, and build self-confidence. You can do this, and we are looking. If you are interested, it's being sold on Amazon, Barnes and Noble.
I'm going to put the link in right now. Yeah.
Okay, and other sellers. And if you like the book, of course, we'd love a review. If you don't like the book, tell me about it privately. Okay. But in any event, you know, books are not, you know, we're also oriented to online information and doing it. But I think there is a world where you want to have a book and you can thumb through it and find an index and get what you want to go without pushing websites constantly. It may be on its way out. books, hard copies, and so forth. But I think there is a small corner of the world that really appreciates having a book that they can carry with them.
I
and look
agree.
at.
So, okay, Nancy, you're gonna share your screen so we can get started with all the slides and information Nancy has. And while Nancy's doing that, if people can just put in the chat, we'd just like to know really, where you're watching from, but also more importantly, what year you have a student in high school. It just kind of gives a sense of who's out there and what type of information you might be looking most for. So if you could share that in the chat, that would be great. I figured, yeah, a lot of families with juniors, it makes complete sense. This is perfect information for you.
And seniors, this class, the senior class that maybe skipped freshman year of high school and went direct, these folks really need information. That's what we're finding out there. And Debbie, you're going to make this slideshow available in a PDF form.
Yes. So first of all, just again, housekeeping, we send the link out to the recording tomorrow. We put it up on YouTube if you want to go watch it at any time. And then we can either send a copy of the PDF. Nancy, actually, we'll just send it in the email itself. So if anybody wants the actual slides and to slowly flip through them, they'll have it as part of the email.
Well, the advantage of this is that the as a PDF, the links in the slideshow will stay live, so you can explore some of the articles, because I tend to make too many slides, and I'm going to end up trotting through some of this rather quickly. And if you want to go back and read some of the source documents and experiment with some of the stuff, that'll be great too. So, and I think a PDF will help that.
Great, that makes sense. Okay.
All right. So another plug for the book here. What I want to, if you don't get anything else out of this presentation today, I really want you to understand that building a college list is more of an art than it is a science. There's not any particular science. There's no, I mean, as much as we have we can offer you a lot of advice on how to do this and steps, and which I'm going to do. At the end of the day, this is a very subjective process. And it really depends on the student. It depends on resources the student has. There are just so many variables here that we can't necessarily, as much as we'd like to figure them into a search engine and make this a science and say, pop out, here it is, you're perfect, like ChatGPT, here's your college. It doesn't work that way. There's just too many emotions and other things involved in this. But nevertheless, there are a lot of folks out there who have a lot of different things and advice. There's a world of college admissions advice on the internet, and it's from Instagram and TikTok to the college websites themselves. And at the same time, if you have a student in the process, he or she is probably receiving enormous numbers of emails from different colleges also trying to market their programs. And this is an amazing analysis that this one student did of the different kinds of colleges that contacted him. And there are lots of different kinds of sources that you can be using. I mean, if you're old school, like me, maybe you like books, magazines, and things that you can hold in your hand and look at, but they have their pluses and minuses. Websites, you have to be careful because they can be biased. A bias for a college website will be that they're trying to market their college to you. A bias on some kinds of search engines, or maybe they're trying to sell you certain bits of information, or even more often, frequently, they're trying to get your email address so that they can keep mailing to you. Probably the best way to get a feel for a college is actually getting your feet on the campus and walking around and getting your answers. Now, this has been hard since the pandemic. We're getting back in shape. We can actually make schedules and go visit places, but it's not always convenient to go across the country if your kid's California dreaming. And then we have our group of relatives and kibitzers, the folks out there who've always got an opinion about everything. And yeah, you want to put it, file it away in the head, and your student will be listening. And probably the first shot at building a list will come from what the student has either heard from a parent or a family member or a neighbor about such and such college, or whether they've seen them on TV, watching football games, basketball, what have you. they will have in the back of their minds names. And it usually comes from this community of folks who have been talking to them. Now, once upon a time, believe it or not, we did not have college guides. And Mr. Fisk from the New York Times discovered he could make money if he put all this information in a big book. And these are the big book guides. And very handy, but very annoying for the colleges. The colleges asked folks, everybody who wanted to do these publications, to come together and share data in a central location so that they wouldn't have to keep filling out survey forms. And this was the birth of what we call the Common Data Set. I'm starting with the Common Data Set here because this is a background tool that everybody can use. And then second part of this presentation, I will talk about actually list building, but I want you to be familiar because this is a tool that you can use throughout the process. But in any event, the Common Data Set is a source document. This is not sliced and diced data. This is information that a college puts on, fills out a form, submits. Now, the College Board stepped forward during the creation of the Common Data Set and said, we will maintain the computer here. And so you all submit your information to us, and then we will, give it out to the publications. Now, what that means is that the College Board got it first, and they use it first. And that's why their Big Future website is as strong as it is. And it used to be they had a good book that you could also use. But in any event, the Common Data Set as a tool is a collaborative effort. The goal was to improve the quality and accuracy of information and to have clear and standard definitions of what it means, what different terms in the process, what yield means, what any of these terms that we use regularly in the admissions process that we would try and standardize. Now, that hasn't been exactly what's happened, that there are some pros and cons with the Common Data Set. And the pros are that generally it's the most current information, and colleges will start posting it late fall.
Nancy, sorry to interrupt. Can you explain, and I meant to email you this ahead of time, so I don't want to throw you off, but explain the timing a little bit of the Common Data Set, meaning like what information is in there, what it's really based on, what year,
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I think people are sometimes confused about that.
Yes, and it is confusing. What happens is that once a freshman class begins in the fall, say the fall of 2023, okay, the college is given a certain amount of time and a snapshot date when they're supposed to be providing data. And it's typically in October, okay, that the number of students on campus, the number of freshmen, the number, all the numbers for fall of 2023. But that Common Data Set will be labeled 23-24.
I know, that's what's so confusing.
And yes, that is confusing. And so the most current Common Data Set that you will find right now on websites will be the 22-23.
Admissions year, right? That's what
that will be the label of the Common Data Set. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And then starting usually November, December, some of the eager beavers will start posting their Common Data Sets for 23-24, but they're not up there yet. They're not available yet. 22-23 is your most recent one. Okay. And when they're talking about their freshman class in the Common Data, the data that they're providing, that will be the kids that showed up in fall of 2022. We don't have fall of 2023 quite yet. But I will show you one state that's ahead of the game, and that's Virginia, where I am. And we see their data much earlier than the Common Data Set even. Anyway, not every college posts it. Typically, some do, most do, particularly more selective schools do, although there are some outliers there like the University of Chicago that refuses to put its Common Data Set up. And folks that don't want you to necessarily know the data, don't put it up there. But in any event, This is a general puzzle looking breakdown of the various sections of the Common App. And probably Debbie is interested in the financial aid and the annual expense. But I live in section C, which is the admissions data. And you'll see a lot of these questions will go, a lot of the questions go to answering certain concerns that you might have as a parent or a college applicant. The common data set is very easy to access. You can use the search bar on the college website, just say common data set, or I use Mr. Google. I put common data set into quotations and then I add the name of the college. I hope I'm not going through this too quickly, but I really want to show you one example. Can you see Debbie is
yes.
Okay. The nice thing about William & Mary is that, first of all, look at this. They're giving you the common data set back for years and years. If you want to look at trends on wait lists, how often William & Mary has gone to its wait list. If you want to look at trends in yield, if you want to look at it, you can go back for a long time. But as I said a moment ago, I live in admissions, okay? So what I'd like to do, and usually when I do this presentation, I have somebody out there I can ask, but I want you to take a look at these first two numbers. Okay, you have the number of men who applied to William & Mary. You have the number of women who applied to William & Mary for fall of 2022 admissions, okay? What do you see here? You got a lot more girls than boys applying to William & Mary. Then when you go down to the next line, this is a source document. This is a document that the college filled out and submitted. So I just want to underscore, it's not anybody's interpretation. This is the data. Look at this. What's it tell you? It tells you it's a lot easier to get into William & Mary if you're a young man than it is if you're a young woman, okay? Then you look down here and you see, okay, who matriculated? Which of this crowd actually, the ones that we made offers to, these are all of our offers, who accepted our offers? Again, it's girls, okay? So William & Mary obviously has an issue attracting young men. And maybe if you're a parent and you're looking at these numbers, you might say to yourself, maybe my son has an advantage here. Now, down here, question number C2. Number of applicants offered a place on the wait list. Well, if you do your mental math, you see that the freshman class was about a little over 1,600 kids. Look at this. Almost 4 times as many kids in the class were invited to be on the wait list. And typical of wait lists in this world, about 50% of the ones offered accepted places. And when you drill down further, how many of those 2,000 kids actually last year got off the wait list? A big 4, okay? So again, if you're a parent and your son or daughter has been put on the wait list at William & Mary and you are so excited because that's a lifeline, maybe my kid's gonna get in, you might take a look at William & Mary's track record for admitting off of the wait list. I can tell you in the year 2020, they admitted quite a few. About a third of the class off the wait list. But beyond that, it's usually looking like this. All right. This is all kinds of very valuable data. Question C7. What's very important? You see all these websites that tell you whether alumni admissions or what have you is very important. Where is that data coming from? They're going to common data sets and analyzing it. And you can see here what William & Mary thinks is important and what isn't important. But one thing that stands out to me is right here. William & Mary has an interview. I need to go back to the website and find out the terms of the interview and make sure my kid gets the interview. Then you travel down here a little bit more and you see a lot of information around. This is very tricky in our world of test optional admissions. You see, when you add this together, about 70% of the freshman class turned in scores. There's an overlap. Sometimes kids will submit both ACT and SAT. And this doesn't take into account that there are also some politics involved with athletes and so forth. But you might look at here and say, okay, well, it looks like we're close to 70% submitted test scores. Well, maybe I ought to think very carefully whether my child's going to apply William & Mary test optional. Then you come down here. Here is the range of SATs and the range of ACTs of that freshman class. Now, please be careful. These are the kids who actually matriculated, who came. These are not the offers of admission. There will be slight difference. In fact, it's a little bit higher usually. The range, the composite range is a little bit higher for the group of kids that were actually admitted versus the kids who said yes. I said yes to the dress, I'm coming. You'll also notice if you went back and looked at Women Marry for decades, how much this has increased, has gone up this 50% range. And why? Because test optional. In the whole new world of test optional, only the kids with the best scores are submitting, and that is driving test ranges up a little bit. But anyway, I'm not here to really lecture on test optional, but in any event, when you're looking at these test ranges, that's kind of thing to keep in mind. And then finally, another area, the GPA is a question C12. You will find that a lot of colleges do not fill in this GPA. They leave this question blank because it is so meaningless. Unless you know what is going into the computation of the grade point average. It's easy if you know that the GPA is taken directly from the transcript. Then you can compare apples to apples. If the school does not take a GPA off the transcript, then you want to know how it's computed, what they include. Maybe they don't, well, they probably don't include PE. They may not include religion classes. There are other things that they might not include when they come up with that GPA. So this number is frequently left blank on the common data set because colleges understand that.
Sorry, Nancy, sorry, can you scroll back to that? Because there was a question and I've noticed this myself. There's a fair number of colleges that do not share this information, or they leave it blank. I'm not saying that they're purposely not sharing it, but they leave blank the average GPA and all the breakouts. And so you're saying they do that because they are pulling data from different places and they don't really have one source?
Well, no, I think they recognize that, you're comparing different methodologies of computation. And even right here, when you look, here are the schools that do percentages versus the kid, these are, percentages as opposed to just GPA, A, B, C, D, and then associating a number with A, B, C, D. That's even different, okay? And well, actually, that's not it. So this is the percent that submitted their GPA. Well, you will have some students that do submit, the school systems just compute in percentages as opposed to an ABCD number. But in any event, they know that every school district, every school in the country has their own methodology of computing grade point average. And some schools rank and some schools don't rank. In Northern Virginia, most schools do not rank. But, colleges love ranking because that makes it easy for them to assess, when several kids are applying from the same high school. But the GPA, we don't know what's going into it. When you see that it's over 4.0, you know it's weighted. If you see a GPA in C12 that's below 4.0, you don't know if it's weighted or not. It could be. It could be. So when you go to an information session and they throw an average GPA up at you, first question is always, is this weighted or unweighted? Do you take the GPA directly from the transcript or do you recompute?
So that was somebody was asking, if this information isn't here, is there another source to get it? And it's basically, you have to just ask the school the college, if they're willing to share it.
That's exactly right. There's no reputable source for this outside of here or Nessie or College Navigator, which I'm just going to show you a little minute of.
Can I just make one point, because this is kind of related to it, you just said, like, sometimes this information could be weighted GPA, sometimes it could be unweighted. Technically, to my knowledge, the question is actually, colleges are supposed to answer this with unweighted GPA. That's, but the reason why I'm bringing that up is because in general, all of this information, although good and detailed and better than anything else that you're going to get out there, is not necessarily checked. So you might find discrepancies or numbers that just don't add up. So
yeah, when you go back to the pros and cons slide, when you look at it, you'll see this is the College Board offered to collect the data. They did not offer to police the data.
Right.
And that in terms of the data that's provided, the technical assistance is crowdsourced. There is no staff person out there that says, this is what you have to do. So what you're getting is data that colleges care to provide. And I think for the most part, want to provide accurately here.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's purposeful. It could just be like an error that somebody, just, made. So I always point that out, that if you see something that doesn't make sense, go back to the college and ask.
That's right. And most importantly, just to back up a second, for data that is found to be inaccurate, the only punishment is to be taken off of the U.S. News and World Report ranking list for a year or two. And so when you see that has happened to a college, there's probably been a problem with their common data set, and either they had an inexperienced staff member who provided the data, and that happens because these positions, this is a tough job to have, and these positions turn over quite frequently. So you might have an inexperienced person who made an error, or you might have malfeasance. You might have somebody who actually wanted to go up in the rankings and manipulated, or didn't quite understand some of the definitions as they were supposed to be. But this is a great current place to start to look for some background information on your college. Now, the very last thing that I want to show you, there is information here about deadlines. Again, you want to go back to the source, which is the website of the college. But question C21 will tell you whether the school has an early decision program, which, as you know, is binding. You can only apply to one college early decision. But this is telling you that, by the way, William & Mary has two. That would be early decision 1 and early decision 2 here. Okay, 2 opportunities to apply early decision. Now, this is the total number of early decision applicants for William & Mary. And this is what percent were admitted, okay? Now, if you do your mental math, you see, if you apply early decision, you have a much better chance of being admitted to William & Mary, okay? And if you look at 620, remember we did we figured out that the class was about 1,600 in total. You see 620 of them came in early decision. So about a third of that class was filled by early decision. So this is actually a very useful place to find out whether or not to do some research, whether or not you wanted to whether it's an advantage to apply early decision, knowing that probably the athletes and legacies and other folks that have sort of a special road in might be going early decision. Typically, coaches will say that their athletes have to apply early decision. But this gives you a rough idea of how much the college depends on early decision. Very seldom will you get much detail on the early action stuff. But in any event, we're going to go back here, and I'm going to very, very quickly just show you another. Again, there are a number of forms that colleges can use for the common data set. This is the form that MIT uses. And I just want to show you here, where the previous William & Mary, males had a distinct advantage in the applicant pool. Here's a situation where it's all about the girls. MIT is looking for young women, but their applicant pool is very biased towards young men. You see that the admissions numbers are very similar, but MIT is very confident about who's going to say yes, so they don't have to inflate the numbers of admissions offers they make out that they provide, because they know that they want to get around this number, and they don't have to and it would be very predictable who's going to say yes. And so, although again they don't get to exact parity here, and there are more young women in the applicant pool in life than young men, but you can see that that they are pretty good at estimating and taking that into account. I wish usually I stop and say, do we have any questions? But that's, I guess, that. The other one I want to very quickly point out to you, common data set is typically the most current and but typically the more accurate is our federal government. It lags, it can lag up to a whole year, okay? Sometimes even more. But every college that receives a nickel of federal funding must report data to these folks. And it behooves them to make it as accurate as possible. Because the feds do check up on it on occasion. So this is basically your federal government at work. The advantage here, and you can read the instructions, is that you can generate a spreadsheet. You can generate a comparison group. If we had more time, I would show you how that works. And there's kind of a little quirk in the programming for them. You have to use an ampersand for William & Mary, or this will not come up. And so here's William & Mary. You get a little bit of you know, information. Usually this will come up and show you some basic information about William & Mary here. And then you have general subcategories that are very nice because they—
Nancy, yeah, click on admissions. It gives you similar information, but not in the same level of detail as the common data set.
Right, but it also gives you some graphics, which is nice for those of us. Like, for example, retention, which is defined as the number of freshmen who return for sophomore year. That's just, you know, for you to know. We've got here, you know, for a public institution, William & Mary has a very, very good freshman retention rate, despite all the complaints that, oh, they worked so hard at William & Mary. But you know, they got a good retention. They have an excellent, for a 4-year public university. They have a very good overall graduation rate, and you can see visuals here, which is helpful, I think. And you can see that, you know, the federal government, by the way, when you're asking about graduation rates, typically a college is going to be talking about their 6-year graduation rates, because that's what the federal government sort of zeroes in on. And across the country, the 6-year graduation rates are at about 58%, Debbie, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
So when a college says our graduation rate is above the national average, remember that the bar is kind of low there. But again, the graduation rates, a 4-year graduation rate, though, and these are 2 different cohorts of students, is a bit lower, because more kids now are taking an extra year and a little bit more time than 4 years to graduate. In any event, and also, again, the males are not graduating in quite, you know, it's very close. The females are, you know, they have a higher bar to get over. So who knows, maybe they're more dedicated to graduating on time. But in any event, the nice thing about College Navigator is that you have some really good pictures, and you can take a look at you can see things, and that's good. Another thing that they have, Common Data Set has this as well, but this is great because it just lays it out for you. It shows you how strong various departments are, and you can see William & Mary is a typical liberal arts institution. There's no engineering here, right? Although they do have computer science now, it's probably more designed to support data science or business. But you can see that there are a lot of business majors. I don't know if I were thinking about being a German major, whether William & Mary would be my choice, since last year they only graduated, and again, this is the graduating class of 2022. Well, actually, this is College Navigator, so it could be older than that.
Right, I think it's older than that.
Yeah. But you could see that the German department may not survive. They're not graduating very many folks here. So, you know, you can look at the strength of a department and come to some ideas there. All in all, my 2 favorite sources of data are, in general, the Common Data Set, to do a little bit of background, starting maybe with that little list that is in the back of the head of the student, you know, my neighbors, my in-state schools, the football stars, what have you. And to begin to start sorting out and looking if there's any, you know, reality in terms of numbers, the objective, more objective things. Now, one of the things that that Debbie pointed out to me, and I think is right, that there are some biases in any data source, and one for the College Navigator involves the pricing data, and we're not going to get into the weeds here on that, but it's definitely, when you're looking at, this is the best data you're going to get, and nobody's interpreting it for you, but it still can have biases, it still can have some problems. In Virginia, I'm just going to point this out. We are lucky. We have Chev, and they make all of the public and all the private institutions in the Commonwealth post all of their data. Like for 2023, the incoming freshman class, that will be posted by the end of October, and it's all sitting right here in chart B10. And if you have anybody who's interested in Virginia schools, you can get it much sooner than you're going to get it on any website in the country, any website or anywhere. But that's Virginia. They're pretty good about that stuff. Now, slicing and dicing means basically, in my mind, that you've taken either the Common Data Set or College Navigator baseline data, and you have reformatted it, made it nice to look at, or you put it into a search engine. You've created a search engine using as your fundamental data one of these sources. Okay. Now, there are a lot of different places where you can look at these data points and get the information, which is not, it's using source data, but it's interpreted or it's reformatted, okay, in a way that they think that parents or students might find useful. And one of the things that, one of the most popular of all of the reformatting, of course, is Big Future from College Board. Everybody, I mean, a lot of kids use it. I think in high schools we train around Big Future sometimes. It's been an evolving website. It has changed a great deal this year. It's not quite as useful as it used to be, but still, it's a nice search engine where you can plug in basic things like location, geographic location, major, how much you want to spend, and certain quality of life issues. We're going to go through this a little bit more, but you can plug these in and the search engine will help you. One of the more recent developments in data analysis is a Tableau. Okay, and if you're into data research and so forth, you might find these entertaining. A lot of colleges are putting them up on their IR pages, and it's not there. That's bad. They must have moved it. Let me see if I can pull it up here in, come on, let's have it. Yes, okay. Here's, I'll have to fix that. I'll fix that before I send this, the PDF to you. Anyway, this is, you can manipulate different functions and look at different years. You can see, by school, the business school, women admitted to the business school, or men admitted to the education program, what have you. You can manipulate and play with the data. This again is becoming very popular, and folks like to play with the data, who like to play with it and understand Tableaus. Do it.
Nancy, a quick question, and I hear this question a lot. I don't know if you have any resources. Somebody's asking is there a place to find acceptance rate by major at a school, or is it? I mean, sometimes a school
sometimes on the school
offers
website,
it a little bit, yeah.
Not very often.
Right.
And
So
but
you can ask. There isn't a major source. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. When you go to an information session, whether it's a virtual session or you're actually on the campus, ask. I found that maybe 50% of the time you'll get an answer. They'll say, well, I don't have those numbers right in front of me, right? But it's worth asking. There's no source that I have. The other quick thing I want to point out, because I just love these people. Two of my colleagues do this, volunteer to do this every year. And this year, for the first time, they actually have an interactive version of their charts. This chart, without going into too many details, will provide you with information that we just talked about with William and Mary. The advantage of applying early decision as opposed to regular decision, as well as the percent of the class filled by early decision candidates, okay? Well, again, if you want the PDF of this afterwards, you can go investigate this. Website is fabulous. And this new interactive feature really gives you some visuals where you can actually see some of what's been going on and rank some colleges as to how much advantage early decision gives and how much the class they fill early decision. All right.
So Nancy, this feels like a tiny bit of a natural break because I know you're going to kind of switch to talking about how to actually build the college list. This was like all the resources. We didn't work the details out about this, but I'm just going to throw this out. You did say that you were going to be able to give away 2 books, right?
Yes. Yep.
And so we randomly picked 2 people's names. I'm going to put them in the chat. If you're here and you see your name, I'll so you'll send me an email and we'll figure out how to get you the book. But I just wanted to kind of do a little bit of fun.
That's
break.
great.
Yeah.
Great. And you know, all I need is the address and I'll stick it in the mail for you. You
Okay.
know.
Great. We'll work it
Awesome.
out. You
too may have a free copy of the book.
Right.
And please write a review, a nice one. Yes.
Yeah.
In any event, we have Road to College here, the College Insights. And again, what source of data do you use for your search engine here?
It's actually Common Data Set. It's a combination. We actually combine Common Data Set and when Common Data in other pieces of information that we think are interesting that isn't in the Common Data Set, we pull it from iPads, and then we have crowdsourced information, which is our own information that we gathered directly from parents or
Awesome.
families. Yeah.
Awesome. So anyway, these are good possibilities, slice and dice data pulled from the 2 sources that I just showed you. Now I'm just going to say yes, you can use ChatGPT to do college search. However, you need to, if you're using artificial intelligence, you need to know what they're scanning, what they're looking at. ChatGPT, some of the data, it's 2 years old. If you use a program where a platform where you're paying maybe a monthly fee, that data could be more current. What's going on in colleges, the change, the adding new majors, subtracting majors, dropping, and we just heard another, you know, West Virginia University is going to drop all of its foreign language. You know, there's so much change going on. If you use artificial intelligence to do any of this kind of research, please make sure you know what, you know, how current it is and what its biases are and what it might. It's fun. I have used it. It is fun to use. You put in your parameters and it chokes up some stuff, although not always accurate. It's out. I think in years to come, we will rely more and more on basic artificial intelligence. All right, now this is our time. Close your eye and think for a moment. When you picture a college, what are the 1 or 2 things that stand out that you absolutely, when you think about a college, what do you think about? Do you think about ivy colored covered walls? Do you think about togas? Do you think about beautiful brand new state-of-the-art laboratories? Or are you thinking the biggest food court I've ever seen in my life? Okay. This is, everyone has in their mind an image of what a college looks like, and a kid, when you're working with a student, you want to kind of get at what they consider the perfect college to be and what they are interested in, you know, what they must have when they're considering a school. The first thing that you really kind of want to do is towards building your college list is, and we're going to go through elements of the college experience, but you can do this on 3x5 cards. We have, I don't know if you're familiar with this, College Match, which is wonderful, has charts that you can fill out to get at things that you must have versus things that you would like to have or that you might be willing to compromise on. If, for example, you have a lot of AP credits and you want to get out of college in 3 years, or you want to get out quickly, then it may be you must have a college that's generous with AP credits. But if if that's not so important to you, maybe you'd like to get out a few basic courses, and so you might be willing to compromise there, and it wouldn't be top of mind. And if you don't have any AP credits at all, maybe not anything that you want to consider. But this is, again, there is no science here. It is an art, and it's like getting a general idea of what elements of the college experience are must-haves. I want the Greek system. I've all my life I've wanted to be a sorority, and I won't go to a school that doesn't have an active Greek system. Or I want to study abroad. I won't. That's an easy one because everybody has study abroad virtually. But I mean, you want to kind of sort things into what are what you must have versus what you're willing to compromise and what you think you might like. Again, plug the book, chapter 4. And at the very end of chapter 4, we have a very simple chart that you can actually begin to fill out. Again, there is no science here. It's just sort of the feelings of what's important to you or not. But anyway, chapter 4. Now, what I want to caution and what you should caution your students about, there are things that we really don't want you to necessarily factor in for building your college list. And that would be rankings. Rankings, without going into a whole lot of weeds and getting into the weeds and diving deep in this, rankings are biased. And the metrics are set up to tell a story that the person who's making the ranking wants to tell. So it's fine to use the, look at them for general names and, particularly majors. But I've had families come into me and say, I will not go below number 25 on U.S. News and World Report. Literally, I won't go below number 25, period. What does that mean? What's wrong with 26? I'm sorry, what's wrong with 27? And what's so special about 25? So in any event, please don't base your college lists on rankings. You can use them as background information if you want, but not, don't make those kinds of line judgments. High school romance, it's not a good idea to follow that boy, true love will wait, okay? I had a girl who was very anxious. She didn't think she was very beautiful, and all the campus, she said, I can't go there because they're all beautiful people. Well, the beautiful people are probably at the University of Southern California. But beyond that, the party scene, there's not a parent in here who wants the kid to put a college on the list because they have whoop-dang parties, okay? So we don't want that. Winning teams, that's very, winning teams brings visibility to a college, and that's what sometimes kids will base their list, particularly the first draft of the list. Following friends, this is your path. Don't follow your friends. It might be nice to know 1 or 2 people on campus, but sometimes it's great to start again. The family pressure, where mom and dad went to college, that's always out there. University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, I went there and you'll love it. Yeah. That might be a place where we start to we might put initially colleges where mom and dad went, but it might be that after you've done some investigation that they get eliminated, okay, because they aren't the right fit. The last 2 things are what we battle in the industry all the time: prestige and feelings of entitlement. I have worked so hard. I have killed myself through high school. I deserve this college. That doesn't work that way. The colleges decide at the end of the day, and it's a subjective process. So, feelings of entitlement, don't build your list of all Ivy League schools because you've worked so hard in high school, because you're cruising for problems. And then the perceived prestige issue, of course, again, I've worked hard. I'm a great student. I deserve this. Your list may contain a few of those, but to have an entire list built on prestige issues is a bad plan. But what's a good plan? Well, we want to begin to sort things out. These are elements of campus life and culture. Distance from home. If your student has an idea, I had one of my kids wanted to be on Amtrak, couldn't be very far, had a compass point, wanted to be near. My other kid got on an airplane and went to California and took 9 years to come back. So distance from home, setting, rural, urban, suburban. I mean, they're very different feels about those campuses. If you you like Virginia Tech, out there, in the rural area of Virginia, you may feel very uncomfortable with George Washington University right downtown in DC. So, I mean, that's a consideration. The mission of the school, liberal arts versus R1 research, liberal arts college. Size, I mean, some kids are very comfortable and love that liberal small, the professor knows me and I want to go to medical school and I'll need a recommendation in the end. So size, it does matter. Whereas other kids like the rah, I want the biggest and bestest football. Again, back to that, following the sports, but I want to just disappear in the crowd. I don't care. Residential, sometimes kids need to live from home and commute. And if you're going to commute, is it a commuter friendly place? Specialty housing, that's really an up and coming thing where we have living and learning communities where kids live with other kids who have similar interests, sustainability or puzzles even. There are all kinds of places that have these living and learning communities. Sometimes they're around honors colleges. Colleges have cultures. Some are politically conservative, some are liberal. If you have a special performing art thing that you need to have there, if you're a dancer or an artist or what have you, and maybe you don't want to go to a conservatory, but you want to make sure that you can study or excel or do something in these areas. Athletics, if that's important to you, activities, Greek scene, community, whether you want a religious school or something, the Catholic schools, the Jesuit colleges and so forth. But again, other things that you might want to look at, diversity. Is it a diverse campus? And you can use these data sources that I showed you to investigate that. And then institutional priorities. What's important to the institution? Look at the mission statement. Look at what, the configuration of courses. If it's not an engineering school and you want to be an engineer, then that priority's got to go look someplace else. Academics, where do you fit in terms of grades and scores? Again, going back to your common data set, the grades and scores information, or anything that you can peel off of a college website. Where does your kid fit in the scheme of grades and more easily the score factor? Is what you study available? If you want to study German, how long is William and Mary going to continue to offer that as a department? Do you have to commit to a specific school when you apply or a specific major? Or does everybody go in through one front door and decide 2 years later where they're going? Are there accelerated paths to professional or graduate school? One obsession that I encounter quite often is the BSMD program, which is horribly selective and not offered very many places. Matter of fact, colleges are dropping it now, left and right. Are there honors programs, and do you qualify? Does the student qualify? Are there resources available for these kinds of supports? You want to do research, you want to get your PhD in chemistry, or you want to go to medical school or what have you. It's important to have undergraduate research. Are you interested in a pre-professional track, not a major necessarily, but a pre-professional track where that you will get some supports in terms of organizations and counseling and so forth for law school or medical school or what have you? Are there co-op or internship opportunities? The majors, picking out what you're going to major in. Some of these, kids aren't necessarily at this age fully formed human beings. They don't all know what they want to do in life. But there are some ways that you can get at, well, are you a STEM person? Are you a liberal arts person? Or do you have a passion for languages? There are also some resources here that if you want to, that you can do a little bit of a self-assessment. There are large scale assessments that you can go through and discover what color your parachute is, but I've not had a lot of, I don't mean to say anything about that, but they're not always that accurate. But regardless, it's okay if you don't have a major. A lot of kids apply undecided. It's not the end of the world. And a lot of kids change their major after a year or two. A lot of engineering students don't end up as engineers. They end up in business school, by the way. Finances, this is Debbie's thing. Really, you need to have this honest talk with your kid about finances. And frankly, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I think parents have an easier time talking about sex than they do about the family budget and what the parameters will be and what the student might be expected to contribute along the way. Benefits of public versus private, merit scholarships, where that figures in. Are you willing to work over the summers? Are you willing to work during the school year? These are all things that, you want to have these conversations and please be honest, because there's nothing worse than a kid works really hard to get into a college and then parent will call me and say, geez, we're so excited he's in Michigan, but do you realize how much more expensive Michigan's going to be than Virginia? I'll say, yeah, but that was true a year ago. And you encouraged Michigan. Well, I thought I would maybe get a scholarship. Well, I told you, Michigan doesn't get very many out-of-state scholarships. And you can research that. So,
Nancy, there's a question which I think kind of relates to what you've been talking about. This is all great, like information. It's great. They're great prompts, to have with conversations with your family, with your student. And somebody's basically asking if you can't visit, how do you really figure out whether the school is the right fit? Do you think that visiting is critical, or can you still get a sense without being able to do that college visit?
Well, remember, I'm from the last century. And in the last century, we didn't typically visit very many colleges. My father went to the University of North Carolina. The first time he ever walked on the Chapel Hill campus was the day his train got there, freshman year. But in this day and age, these kids are visual, touchy-feely. They get a sense of do they fit in the place, although that changes. If you started visiting really early on, you might find they changed their mind a year later, that what was not appealing to them suddenly maybe isn't so bad. But yeah, we can't all get in a plane and fly to California, but we may think that various schools have exactly what we want in size and configuration and so forth. Yes, you can do a lot of the schools now have wonderful virtual tours and information sessions. They're very good, not precise, and again biased because they're selling you. You have a lot of other resources, and we list a number of them in the book, of student reviews, lots of material where you can see what students that are currently on campus, videos, the real, you can look at some of these sites that will give you videos that the students themselves, undergraduates themselves, put together. It's all approximate. It's not exact. Another thing is, if you have somebody in the neighborhood or a graduating senior who left last year and comes back at Thanksgiving, big freshman, you have to spend some time with that person, or on the phone, or on the internet, or one-on-one. What do you like about the place? What is great? Why? It's investigating, getting the feel for the place. Again, colleges will tell you, we want you to come see for yourself, because they know that's the best chance of recruiting you, is if they can get you on the campus. But in reality, it's hard to envision and know exactly. That said, I still think that the kids who have done their investigations but have not actually had the opportunity or the good fortune, kids don't understand this is good fortune that their parents take them to visit these schools. That 9 times out of 10, they're okay, and they get there and it's fine. Just like my father in Chapel Hill was never happier in his life. Maybe, and I only visited one college, and I only applied to one college, but that was last century. This century, we're different. We're hands-on. We want visual, and so colleges are helping by providing lots of visual aids and supporting that. And they also are making their admissions people available on one-to-one basis. And regional reps are big now. If you go onto the website, you see, sometimes by high school, sometimes by region. Don't hesitate to set up a, kind of a communication line there, and do like we're doing today, a Zoom, where you can actually talk to the person. And we've got a lot of those media things here. And if you're going, for example, I only throw this in here because the pre-med kids have certain things that we've talked about that they really want to have available to them. They want to have undergraduate research. They want to have easily accessible clinical hours. If you have to get on a bus and ride an hour to the nearest clinic, then that's not so great. So I just put this in as an example of what a particular major, a kid who knows what they want to do in life, what they might be looking for in the way of those elements of a college experience.
So, Nancy, somebody asked, and I don't know offhand in your book, do you have a list of questions that people should be asking if they do go on a college tour?
Oh, well, yes, we do. And let me see if I can back up a minute. Go back. There we go. Let's see. This, the National Survey of Student Engagement, NESE, out of the University of Indiana, has a little pamphlet you can order. It's also online if you just want to print it out, with lots of questions about that students can ask. Okay, that's a wonderful, wonderful resource, and I recommend it. But also, we do provide some questions in there, and we also have some ways of things that you want to look at. You know, you want to look at what's posters on the bulletin boards, what's going on. You want to be sensitive to what you're looking at when just walking through the campus, going to the cafeteria. Are people sitting in groups and talking, or is everybody on their own? Do you see a lot of logo gear on campus? How about if you can't get to the campus, online you can listen to their radio, online you can read their student newspapers, right? This gives you a real feel for the culture of the school as well. There are a lot of resources out there that, again, proxies for being there. And then the questions that you ask, there are some in the book, and again, the NESE document is a very good place to start. But that's an excellent question, and usually I spend quite a bit of time with that, but we're not doing that today, so I'm chugging away here. Now, at the end of the day, you want your college list to be balanced, and these are terrible terms, but there just aren't any good ones that I've discovered. I think we use slightly different terms in the book, but people are most familiar with this. You're going to have a lot of dreaming going on, and by definition, any college that admits less than 15% of their applicants, I don't care what your background is, that is a stretch school, period. Now, some people say under 20%. I put it at 15, but if you're looking at a school that admits less than 15% of the applicants, just put that right up in the reach, okay? If your GPA and test scores are at or below published mid-ranges, then maybe that too is a stretch. But then again, remember, of course, that we're living in the world of test optional, so you may still dream on, but keeping in mind that if your student scores are, if you're really way out of step with what the group, the larger group in the university, has, is that a place where you're going to be feeling comfortable? I mean, not just that, it's not just a question of getting in. It's also a question of when you get there, is this a place where you're going to be competitive and feel comfortable? A target or a match means that maybe they admit about 25%. Your student has a reasonable likelihood of admission, and they're within that 50% range. Again, keeping in mind that if you're on the low end of the range, you may still be thinking about test optional admissions, but it could be conceivably a target school. Then finally, the foundation schools are ones where you think, this is a school my student can get into. All of his or her numbers are above the average. They take at least 40–50% of their students, that this is a safe school. Now, the bad news, these things move around on us. They are not stationary. They are not fixed in concrete. There are mitigating factors. If you are one of the top quarterbacks in the country with an SAT, SAT range, less than 1,000, based on numbers, Stanford is a real stretch for you. But if the coach at Stanford wants you, you have a hook, as we say in the trade, then maybe it becomes a safe school. Okay. We talked about this earlier. If you apply early decision, maybe the school is a target for you. But if you don't apply early decision to this particular school, it might just become a stretch. Okay. Or the competitiveness of the major. If you apply to Virginia Tech in large animal husbandry or water resource management, it might be a safe or a likely admit for you. However, if you're looking for engineering or business or computer science, then maybe it becomes a stretch. So, you know, we talk about having a balanced list. We talk about these categories and as if they are, you know, set, fixed. They aren't. It depends on the student. It depends on circumstances. It depends on lots of different things. And again, ability to pay may also factor into whether the school becomes, you know, a stretch or a target. Sad to say that sometimes if you check the box that you need to have financial support, that might affect the decision made for you. There's so much
Nancy,
of this.
sorry, there's a question, somebody's asking, are you saying that a safety likely score has an acceptance rate of at least 70%? This person is saying, I found that even schools with a 70% acceptance can be selective and not considered safe.
Right, and that's where the mitigating factors come in. I mean, for, you know, let's see, University of Washington or UIUC, they take a lot of kids. They're big schools, they take a lot of kids. However, they have these uber selective computer science programs. And particularly if you're applying from out of state and where you live factors. Getting into University of Washington out of state in computer science, you're talking about maybe a 2 to 3% admit rate. Whereas their overall admit rate is much more generous than that. Yeah, you're right. And some of these 70% schools, you know, there can be factors in your student's application or background that make it more challenging to get into. So as much as we say that, you know, this list business, it really is a fuzzy, the lines, you know, I find myself saying, well, I think that's a target plus, or maybe it's a dream minus. And I try and blur the lines a little bit because the lines are not exact. But one thing I have to say, and again, building your college list, we got a lot of information in chapter 5. And that a safe school, I should probably rearrange this. A safe school, it's not on the list to make me happy as your consultant or your mom and dad or your high school counselor happy, because you gotta have a safe school there. It's got to be a school you'll be willing to go to. It cannot, you waste your own time, you waste everybody's time. If you're not willing to go to that school and you know, but you feel that you have to balance, everybody's saying balance the list, then you're wasting time. And we also recommend that not just admissions safe, financial safety as well. One that you can afford, that not only have a good chance of getting in, but you can afford it. Okay. So, I mean, where am I going? I'm going back again. Oh, I'm sorry. This is because I'm not, you know, technologically adept. Here, this is what I was looking for. I've broken this down into steps. Okay. Once you have a general idea, starting with a basic list, and again, the kids and parents and everybody always has names in the head. You just start there. Then you might want to begin to work with a search engine. And these are just 2, but you know, Debbie's got a great one too to use that might generate more college names. And then you want to begin to, you're rounding out your list and you want to be put together a spreadsheet where, you know, where it meets what I want in a college, and then do even more in-depth investigations and get the data that you want and look at the reality of admission. Or is this a place I'm going to have to apply test optional? Can I afford it? Is this a generous college typically? I mean, you know, you might want to do a little bit of filling out some financial aid information and digging into that area as well to see if they are likely to give your students some money. I have just gone through an enormous amount of information, and I know there are questions, and
and it just scratches the surface of what's really in this book. Yeah,
that's right. And again, we lay this all out in very direct terms, and workbook, here's how you do this, here's how you think about this. Has a lot, if you have it has chapters on if you have a student who's in performing arts or an artist, you know, or if you have an athlete, or we also have a section on veterans, on children of veterans. There are a lot of, we've tried to cover a lot of different
You also,
scenarios.
don't you, Nancy, I think you might have written this also, the section on testing, like the changes that have happened.
Oh, yes. There are a number of areas that, and one that was evolving and still is evolving is financial aid, is FAFSA and so forth. And we did our best. And what we're going to do is we're going to have, we do have a website that's attached, and I actually should put that, I should put that down. We have a website where we're going to put updates, and they're going to be keyed to the chapters. So when we finally know what's going on with FAFSA and it finally opens, I mean, we know a lot of what's going on, but it's coming out in dribs and drabs. We're going to be trying to keep it up to date. Now, the biggest area that we did know a relative large amount about was test optional, and how to consider and think about whether you're going to apply with test scores or without test scores. And we have some advice, which you wouldn't find in earlier in that detail in earlier editions. Those are the two biggest areas. You know, the way that colleges have adapted since the pandemic in terms of being able to tour place or get information, virtual tours, virtual college fairs and so forth. We addressed that as well. They existed before the pandemic, but now colleges have invested a great deal of money in trying to bring you, even if you can't visit, to get there, to bring you to campus virtually.
And in terms of visiting, it's also, you know, you might want to save your money and visit after your student's been accepted, and use, you know, your time, energy, finances to narrow it down then, as opposed to, you know, if that's an issue. So
if it's an issue, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I get to some points in the process, and we're about there. I mean, we have a couple of holidays coming up. We, you know, where you can, maybe if it's within driving distance, or, you know, you can get and see some, but we're coming to the point now that really I need you to focus on completing your applications,
Right,
and writing your essays. And I don't want you to take off and have a nice, you know, weekend. Now, the exception to that sometimes is if you are making the decision, the early decision. That's a little bit of a, you know, it's an agreement that if you're admitted, you will definitely attend, and you'll withdraw other applications. Sometimes, if it's convenient and the college permits it and will arrange it for you to spend the night, I found that is enormously useful for making that early decision. But it's not always possible, and colleges are being very strict about that now. They're not, they used to be much more welcoming. But the early decision agreement has a, you know, it comes with some strings attached, and to the extent that you feel confident in an early decision agreement, that's the one place that I encourage, if possible, we really ought to try and see the place.
good advice. Yep. Okay, well,
do we have any more time? I guess we're out.
We're a little bit out. It's because it's the middle of the day. I try not to go too far over, but this was great. Nancy, there were a lot of great questions. I tried to throw your way as much as possible. I tried to answer some of them, but people are really thankful. Thank you for all the information today. Thank you for writing and refreshing and editing. I'm not quite sure what the proper phrasing is of the new, but the 5th edition of the book. And I'm sure we'll maybe try and do something else again in the future, you know, on a similar topic or something else in the book. But I know I really appreciate all your knowledge, Nancy, and your effort in writing the book, and all the other authors. I think it's a really good reference book, and a really helpful book for, particularly as we mentioned, as we started this, all the families that, you know, may not have other resources. They don't have other, they're not working with college counselors per se, and they have to kind of do it on their own, but they're not really alone because they got this.
Well, that's our goal. And again, we welcome feedback. We welcome you visiting the website if you have things that you know, questions and things that you would like us to address. Yeah, I'm game anytime. I feel guilty about trying to cover, probably I've tried to cover too much today. I probably should have just
Yeah,
chat
there's
with
probably
people.
there were probably 3 or 4 subjects here that
Techniques.
could have been their own webinars.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, again, I'm in the weeds. I live this every 7 days a week. So I tend to kind of go into detail that maybe what's she talking about? I don't know. But in any event, anytime, I have a Facebook page, and again, I have a website. Let's get the website. So we have the Admission Matters website, which is going to be.
You know what? I don't think we knew that. We will include that link in the follow-up email for the admissions.
Yeah, I
matters.
forgot. It's evolving. It's up. The site is up, and we've already begun to paste stuff, but we haven't publicized it a lot because, the book just came out last week. And we're kind of feeling our way along here and trying to figure out what it is that people need and want us to provide. And updates in the world of college admissions are really important. So anyway, I will fix the UVA link. And I don't know what happened there. They must have moved it. And I'll add the web address for Admission Matters. And anything else?
You. Yeah, no, I mean, I think you did a great job. Thank you, everybody, for coming during the middle of the day. Check out the book. Feel free to send me questions. Feel free to send Nancy questions. And, I hope, and I think, I believe that the information you gave today is really, really valuable. So thank you, Nancy, for sharing so much.
All right. Okay. Till
Okay.
next time.
Yep. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.